She confessed, "I don't love you. I just didn't want to raise this baby alone." I said, "Then you won't have to worry about me at all." The doctor's call later that day revealed a truth even I wasn't prepared for. All right, so I was in the middle of painting the nursery. I just spent the whole morning putting together a crib from hell, you know, the kind with a million screws and instructions that make no sense. But it was finally done, and honestly I was feeling pretty good about it. I was thinking, in 6 months, my son is going to be sleeping right here. That's when my girlfriend Melissa came into the room. She wasn't smiling. She hadn't smiled much lately, but I figured it was just the usual pregnancy stuff, hormones and all that. I was about to show her the crib I'd built, but she had this weirdly blank look on her face that stopped me. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice was totally flat. "Okay," I said, starting to feel a little worried. "Are you okay? Feeling sick?" "I'm fine," she said. She walked into the room but stood awkwardly, like she didn't want to be there. "I need to be honest, this isn't working." I was confused. "What isn't working?" "The paint color. I can repaint it if you don't like it." "No," she said, finally looking at me. Her eyes were just cold. "Us. The relationship. I don't love you." The words didn't even register at first. It felt like a joke. We'd been together 3 years. We were having a baby together. This was our plan. "What are you talking about, Melissa?" I asked. "Of course you love me. You're pregnant with our kid." A nasty little smile played on her lips. "No, I don't. And honestly, I don't think I ever did. You were just a safe bet, comfortable. I figured I could make it work, but I can't." It felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Every memory from the last 3 years suddenly felt fake. I wasn't her partner, I was a project she gave up on. "Then why?" I asked and my voice cracked. I pointed at her stomach. "Why go through with this?" She just shrugged like it was no big deal. It happened. When I found out, I panicked. I didn't want to be a single mom. I don't have the money for it. So I just went along with you and the whole happy family plan. Then she actually laid out her plan for me. She told me we'd stay together for a couple of years after the baby was born. I'd pay for everything and be the dad. And once she was back on her feet financially, we could split up. She said it like she was offering me a business deal. She was going to use my life to fix her problem. I just looked at her. The hurt was massive, but something else was starting to cut through it. Anger. Pure, cold anger. This woman was a stranger. I put the paintbrush down, wiped my hands, and looked her right in the eye. "Then you won't have to worry about me at all," I said. I walked right past her, grabbed my keys and wallet, and left the apartment. I didn't look back. I got in my car and just drove. I had no idea where I was going. I just needed to be moving. The city streets blurred into a meaningless smear of lights and colors. My mind was just a loop of her words, her cold eyes, that horrible little shrug. 3 years. A whole life I thought we were building. And it was all a lie. I was a walking, talking insurance policy to her. That's all. The pain was so sharp it felt like I couldn't breathe. I ended up on the highway, driving 60 miles an hour in the slow lane like an old man, feeling completely numb. After about an hour of this, I pulled into a rest stop and killed the engine. The silence was deafening. I just sat there, trying to figure out what the first step of the rest of my life was supposed to be. Find a new place to live. Call my boss and tell him I wouldn't be in tomorrow. Call my parents and tell them the grandchild they were so excited about was part of a lie. The thought made me feel sick. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again, persistent. Thinking it was Melissa, maybe calling to see if her business partner was ready to negotiate terms, I almost threw the phone against the dashboard. But I glanced at the screen and it was an unknown number. I figured, what the hell, it can't get any worse. I answered, my voice sounding rough. "Hello. Hi, am I speaking with Mark?" A polite woman's voice asked. "Yeah, who's this?" This is Susan from Dr. Evans's office. The doctor wanted to speak with you about the results from your recent physical. Can you hold on for a second? I almost laughed. A physical. I'd had one about a month ago, the first one in years. Melissa had nagged me into it, saying I needed to be healthy for the baby. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Sure, I said, not really caring what it was about. A moment later, the doctor came on the line. Mark, it's Dr. Evans. Sorry to bother you, but when we got your full results back from the lab, I wanted to talk to you myself. His voice was serious, and for a second I thought, great. On top of everything else, I've got some rare disease. Bring it on. It's fine, Doc. What's up? Well, Mark, on your blood panel, we saw some things that were a bit unusual, so we ran some more specific genetic tests just to be thorough. We even ran them a time to confirm. The results show you have a condition. It's called congenital bilateral absence of the vas deferens. I didn't know what any of those words meant. A what? Is it bad? What does it do? There was a pause. The doctor cleared his throat. Mark, what it means is that you're sterile. You were born without the ducts that transport sperm. It's not something that develops. It's a condition you've had your entire life. He started talking about options for the future, about IVF and procedures, but I couldn't hear him anymore. My entire world tilted on its axis. The phone felt slippery in my hand, sterile since birth. One single crystal clear thought cut through the fog of my grief and shock. It wasn't an emotional thought. It was a simple logical equation. If I'm sterile and I've always been sterile, then the baby isn't mine. Suddenly, the last few months snapped into sharp, ugly focus. Her sudden distance wasn't pregnancy hormones. Her lack of affection wasn't just stress. The way she'd been avoiding my touch, the way she flinched when I tried to put my hand on her stomach. It wasn't about me. It was about her guilt and her confession. It wasn't some brave, honest moment. It was a calculated move, a lie wrapped in a half-truth. She confessed to the smaller crime, not loving me, to hide the bigger one. She was testing me, seeing if I would accept a life as a loveless provider, a willing fool to raise another man's child. She must have thought she was so smart, so in control. She probably assumed I would never, ever find out the truth. The sheer, staggering arrogance of it took my breath away. The pain in my chest was gone. The heartbreak was gone. In its place was something cold, hard, and heavy. It felt like a block of ice forming in my gut. This wasn't a breakup anymore. This was a fraud. She hadn't just broken my heart. She had tried to ruin my life, to trap me in the most fundamental way a man can be trapped. I started the car. I knew where I was going now. I was going back to the apartment. I wasn't going back to cry or to yell. I was going back to end this. When I walked back into the apartment, Melissa was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and I could see the surprise on her face. She clearly expected me to be gone for a lot longer, probably thought I was curled up in a ball at a friend's house. She put on a look of cautious pity. Did you have some time to think? She asked, as if I were a toddler who'd just finished a timeout. I know it's a lot to take in, but it's really the most logical solution for the baby. I didn't say anything. I just walked over to the kitchen counter and stood there, looking at her. My calmness seemed to unnerve her more than any shouting match could have. What? She said, her voice a little sharper. Are you going to say something? I got an interesting phone call while I was out, I said, my voice steady. Your mom. Did you tell her? She asked, a flash of annoyance in her eyes. The thought of having to deal with my parents so soon was clearly not part of her plan. No, it wasn't my mom, I said. It was my doctor. I watched her face. A flicker of confusion, nothing more. He called with some test results from that physical I had. I continued, you know, the one you wanted me to get to make sure I was healthy for the baby. Turns out, they found something. A genetic condition I was born with. I let that hang in the air for a second. She was still just looking at me, waiting for the point. It's called congenital bilateral absence of the vas deferens, I said, pronouncing every word perfectly. You can look it up if you want. It means I'm sterile, Melissa. It means I can't have kids, never could have. I will never for the rest of my life forget the look on her face in that moment. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. The color drained away, the smug confidence, the calculated pity, the arrogance. It all crumbled into dust, replaced by pure, wide-eyed panic. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked from me to her stomach and back to me. The mask was gone. I was finally seeing the real person underneath. A cornered, terrified liar. That's not possible, she finally stammered. Doctors make mistakes. They must have gotten it wrong. They ran the test twice, I said, my voice like ice. There's no mistake, so I guess the only question left is, whose baby is it? She just stared at me, her whole body trembling. The game was over. She knew it. All her careful plans, all her manipulations, all of it was gone in an instant. You were gonna let me raise him, I said, the words low and dangerous. You were going to let me paint his room, build his crib, love him, and pay for him, knowing he wasn't mine. You stood there and told me you didn't love me like it was some noble sacrifice, when you were really just a common cheat who got caught. I was going to tell you, she cried, the tears finally coming. They were tears of fear, not remorse. Someday, when the time was right. Don't lie to me, I snapped, my voice finally rising. Not anymore. There was never going to be a right time. You were going to let this lie be my life. I took a deep breath, reining the anger back in. I needed to be cold now. I needed to be strategic. Here's what's going to happen, I said, walking over to my laptop on the counter. You tried to defraud me. You tried to trap me into 18 years of financial responsibility for a child that isn't mine. That's a serious thing, so you're gonna pay me back. She looked confused. Pay you back for what? For everything, I said, opening a spreadsheet I had started in my head on the drive home. You owe me for every dollar I've spent on this lie. Half the rent for the last 4 months since you found out you were pregnant. Half the utilities, all the maternity clothes I bought you, the prenatal vitamins, the doctor's copays, the new mattress we bought because you said your back hurt, the crib, the paint, everything. I started pulling up my online banking statements. I'm meticulous with my finances. I knew I could find every single transaction. You're crazy, she breathed. I don't have that kind of money. That's not my problem, I said. You should have thought of that before you decided to ruin my life. I figure it's somewhere around $15,000. I'll get the exact number and you're gonna sign a legally binding agreement to pay me back every single cent. I won't, she said, trying to find some shred of defiance. You can't make me. Oh, I think I can, I said calmly, because if you don't, my next phone call is to your parents. You're very sweet, very traditional, very religious parents. I wonder how they'll feel when I tell them that their daughter not only cheated on her loving boyfriend, but also tried to trick him into raising another man's baby. I'll be happy to forward them my doctor's report. I'm sure your dad will love that story. Think about it, Melissa. Your choice, sign a piece of paper or have your entire life blown up in front of your family. The threat landed exactly as I intended. Her parents were a lifeline. Their approval meant everything to her. The thought of them knowing the full ugly truth was her worst nightmare. She stared at me, trapped and broken, and finally she gave a single defeated nod. The next 2 hours were surreal. I sat at the kitchen table, methodically going through bank and credit card statements, adding line item after line item to the spreadsheet. Rent, groceries, that expensive pregnancy pillow, the down payment for the top-tier obstetrician she insisted on. She just sat on the couch, silent, watching her debt grow. The final tally came to $16,247. I downloaded a standard loan repayment contract template, filled in the names and the amount, with a modest interest rate for late payments, and printed it. I put the contract and a pen on the coffee table in front of her. She picked it up with a shaking hand, her tears smudging the ink as she signed her name on the line. I took the signed paper, folded it, and put it in my jacket pocket. Then I went into our bedroom and started packing a suitcase. My real life was starting now. I was out of the apartment within the hour. The first thing I did was go to my bank and open a new account. I transferred my half of the joint account funds over. The next morning, I called our landlord and informed him I was breaking the lease. It would cost me the security deposit and 1 month's rent, a fee I happily paid, knowing I would be adding it to Melissa's bill. I sent her a formal, itemized invoice for it, just like I promised. Then I cut her out of my life completely. I blocked her number. I blocked her on all social media. I told my friends and family a carefully edited version of the truth, that we had broken up, the wedding was off, and I would appreciate it if they respected my privacy and didn't ask questions. The consequences for Melissa were, from what I heard, swift and brutal. She was left with a pregnancy, an apartment she couldn't afford on her own, and a legally enforceable debt to the men she tried to destroy. She had to make the one call she was probably dreading more than anything, the one to the baby's actual father. I found out later through a mutual friend who felt I deserved to know. The father was a guy from her work, a married guy. Of course, he panicked, denied everything at first, and then, under threat of his own wife finding out, agreed to give Melissa some money. But he wanted nothing to do with the baby. He wasn't going to be a father. He was just paying to make a problem go away. So Melissa's grand plan of having a stable, two-parent income to support her was in shambles. She was forced to do the one thing she was trying to avoid all along. She had to go to her parents. I don't know what story she told them, but it must have been a mess. Because a few weeks later, she moved out of our old apartment and back into her childhood bedroom. She was 31 years old, pregnant, broke, and living with her mom and dad. Every month she made a small payment to my bank account, a constant, humiliating reminder of her failure. Months passed. I focused on myself. I got a new apartment, just for me. I threw myself into my work. I reconnected with friends I had neglected while I was in the Melissa bubble. The pain of the betrayal faded, replaced by a sense of profound relief, like I had escaped a burning building I didn't even realize was on fire. The sterility diagnosis was a strange thing. At first, it felt like a curse. But in a way, it had been a blessing. It was the one, incontrovertible truth that had set me free. About 7 months after I left, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was just my name. I opened it. It was from Melissa. Inside was a picture of a newborn baby, wrapped in a hospital blanket. My heart clenched for a second, a phantom limb of the fatherhood I thought I was going to have. Underneath the picture was a long, rambling paragraph. He's here. His name is Daniel. He's so perfect. I know I messed everything up, Mark. I was scared and I was stupid and I made a terrible mistake. I think about you every day. I look at him and I think about the life we were supposed to have. I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. Can we please just forget about the money? I can't do this alone. I need help. Please. It was her last, desperate, manipulative play, using a picture of an innocent child to try and get out of the consequences of her own actions. The old me, the men from a year ago, might have felt a pang of pity, but the new me felt nothing but cold resolve. I didn't reply to her email. I didn't acknowledge the picture. Instead, I logged into the online payment portal I had set up for her debt. I clicked a button that sent an automated, official-looking payment reminder to her email address. It showed her current outstanding balance, $15,821. It showed her next payment just 1 week away. I archived her email and went back to what I was doing. I was filling out paperwork, a preliminary application for domestic adoption. The doctor's diagnosis didn't take away my desire to be a father. It just changed the path. I was going to have a family, but I was going to do it on my own terms, built on a foundation of honesty and truth. Her life was a wreck because of the lies she told. My new life was just beginning because of the truth that had, against all odds, found me.